Savvy Central Radio, drawing out the best from our guests, with host Christina Nichman.
Savvy Central Radio is proud to present a live interactive series featuring a new mix to business networking and interviews. Our second event will take place on May 23rd at Tornassol Wellness in Manhattan with our guest, Rochelle Khanna, licensed clinical social worker. She'll share with us her new book, 30 Days of Prayer, Healing Autoimmunity for Women. This event is for health professionals, fitness experts, alternative care professionals, and anyone looking to create optimum wellness in their life. To find out more, book your free ticket today at bit.ly.com/savvyevent, 2. That is bit.ly.com/savvyevent, 2. Hello everyone, and welcome to Savvy Central Radio. This is your host, Christina Nichman. Each week on Savvy, we host successful individuals and business owners, inviting them to share their dreams, stories, wisdom, and lessons learned in their field of business. Our guest today is Michael Dubrow, co-founder of MoneyTips.com. Michael is a serial entrepreneur. At Bargain Network, Bargain.com, Michael and his partner turned a 35,000 startup into a 64 million exit when he sold it 8 years later. Michael is also the co-founder of TouchCommerce, which became a global leader in real-time chat applications for online sales and support. Michael has made it his mission on MoneyTips.com to stress the importance of having a financial game plan. Today, Michael shares with us his story and his wisdom on business and entrepreneurship. To find out more about Money Tips, visit MoneyTips.com. Hi, Michael. Welcome to Savvy Central Radio. How are you?
I am great, Christina. How are you?
I'm doing fabulous today, and I'm excited you could join us on Savvy Central Radio. You have a wonderful journey. Share with our audience how you came to creating your several businesses. You have an amazing story.
Wow. As I just mentioned to you before the formal interview started, I was looking forward to this session because your questions are more human and really interesting. And you might be surprised to learn no one's really ever asked me how I got my start in any of these interviews I've done for Money Tips or our personal finance community. So this is really a fun opportunity. I think, Christina, that all the key elements for success or failure in life are already present in a human being by the time he or she is 4 or 5 years old, and that was certainly true in my case. And I was a very entrepreneurial child. I started school early, around 4, and I was also a very, very small kid, always the smallest kid, typically not only in my class but in my school. But I had this very big imagination and very big mouth, frankly, in this tiny little body. And so people thought it was charming, and I decided to kind of exploit that, sort of to turn a disadvantage into a strength. Anyway, in those days, I truly believed I would be president of the United States, and I would tell people this. So my first formal business venture, which I started around age 7, was to sell my autograph to adults.
So I was a history buff really early in life, and I loved the nickname that Stephen Douglas, the senator from Illinois who had those famous debates with Abraham Lincoln, he called himself the Little Giant. And the moment that I saw that name, I knew it was going to be my brand. At least it wasn't until I actually grew to a normal height in high school. So I would sign each autograph, Mike Dubrow, the Little Giant, future president of the U.S., and I charged $0.25 for this, and made a lot of money doing it for a few years. And one of the key takeaways that I got from that was that if you don't ask for money, you're not going to get it. And I was, I think, 4th or 5th generation salesman, so it was very comfortable for me to ask for the sale. And so I did it, for my autograph and really the same personality elements and drives that we have at 4 or 5 we're going to have when we're adult. And so I was a natural entrepreneur who had a good feel for these things, and I always itched to create businesses and was never very happy working for other people.
Yeah, I love that story. That is great, Michael. And that reminds me, when I was about 5 years old, I never thought of myself as an entrepreneur, but at 5 years old, I went outside and I saw that people were, there were flower companies, people selling flowers in flower shops. So I decided one day I would go and pick flowers, and I happened to pick the flowers off the rose bush of my neighbor. I picked all the roses off her bush and then started to proceed to sell them to all of my neighbors. The neighbor next door, whose rose bush I took all the roses from was not too pleased.
No, you and I would have been dangerous together as kids.
I like what you said, Michael, about you were very comfortable asking for the sale, but you learned a valuable lesson that if you don't ask, you definitely aren't going to make anything. You're not going to get anything in life without asking.
No, that's so true. My father was in the remodeling business. He sold bathroom and kitchen remodeling. And so I would listen to him year after year. He'd sit at home and he'd qualify prospects. He'd make the calls to people's homes before he got in his car to give the in-home presentation. And he would always make sure that the husband and wife were there, and he would ask the kinds of qualifying questions to determine if they were really ready to go and if they could afford it. And so without realizing it, I was also learning how to qualify prospects when I was 6, 7, 8 years old, listening to my father, who was a master at it. So by the time I was in college, I went to the University of California at Santa Barbara in the very early 1970s, which was a very fun time to go to college. The whole world was changing. But I had a good freshman year, but I was just itching to get out into the world and make my way. So I quit school after my freshman year, and within 2 years later, I had built a successful professional theater company in Hawaii, catering to the tourist hotels. By 25, I was selling oil and gas investments on the telephone, which was kind of natural as well. That was real boiler room stuff, straight out of Glengarry, Glen Ross. And then by 30, I was co-founder of an institutional investment firm that helped transform the 401k industry. So wow. The same elements that were there when I was the little giant selling my autograph, I think have persisted through my whole life. And I think that's true for most of us. Yeah. Our fears are the areas where we're confident. I think those elements are in place very early in life.
Yeah. And I heard you mention that a lot of these personality traits and stuff come up early in life. Now, for a lot of people, I'm seeing that entrepreneurship or the idea of it is very, very, very popular right now. And people all over the globe are thinking of starting businesses, and a lot of it out of necessity. I've met a number of people who used to be in corporate who have been laid off and can't get another job. So they're now thinking of the world of entrepreneurship, creating their own business. So with that in mind, that a lot of our own personality traits are set at birth or very early on, can this be learned? Can you learn to become a business owner or entrepreneur?
Boy, that's a wonderful question. I think you can learn, and you must learn, in fact, a whole host of skills and refine those skills having to do with interacting with other human beings, bringing out the best in team members, so, dealing with your weaknesses. I'm a born salesman. I'm not a born administrator. So I've had to learn to be much, much better at administration and details over my life. And so those are important things that can be learned. But I don't think you can learn drive. I don't think you can learn comfort in your own skin. They do surveys of people all the time, and they find that the fear of public speaking for many people is greater than the fear of death. Mm-hmm. So I don't think you can teach that kind of person how to get up in front of a room full of 500 people and give a presentation on a new product or, so you can learn some things, but I think that core need to create and to create with others and the courage to not to operate without a safety net, I don't think you can teach that.
Well, that's fascinating.
What do you think?
I don't know. I've met quite a few people who surprise themselves that maybe they had it in them, but I think often, and you might have noticed this through the general school system, we're kind of geared up and conditioned to go about the way of going to a normal 9-to-5 job, sitting in a cubicle, come home, do the humdrum. And I think sometimes, like myself, I was selling flowers, but did I think of it as sales at 5 years old? No, I didn't. It wasn't until I now started a business many years later that I remember a couple of times in my life early on where I was doing just that, but I never realized it.
Okay, I'm with you.
Yeah, so you've co-founded a company for $35,000, which you later sold for millions. Wow, that is amazing. How did you do that?
This is something I've never told anyone other than my wife.
Wow.
The key to my success as an adult businessman has been nothing original. It's been that I have a very good feel for how to knock off other businesses. And that started very early in my career. Bargain Network is what it came to be known a year or two later, or bargain.com. Essentially, I saw, I would look for businesses. My whole career, I've looked for businesses that already exist. Either I lack the imagination or perhaps I lack the courage to be the first company on the street. I'd much rather be the second or third or fourth and identify a business model that has had a lot of the bugs worked out but is still not operating at its optimum. I created a company called Chambers, Dunhill, Rubin and Company when I was 30. If you don't mind, I'll backtrack and tell you about the company before the $35,000 company, because a lot of the predicates were laid in that business, and then we can circle back.
Sure.
So there was a company, I met a young man who was the son of the Israeli ambassador to Mexico. I was 30, he was 22. And he was one of the most brilliant people I had ever met. And he had already created a desk, basically a sales room, a sales floor, where he was selling CDs institutionally on behalf, certificates of deposit institutionally on behalf of savings and loans all over the country. This was in the late 1970s, early 1980s, I guess, which I'm revealing my age there. And so, in fact, part of the reason the S&L industry went down, I won't put this on the shoulders of this 22-year-old young man, but part of the reason it went down in the early 80s is that certificates of deposit were being sold institutionally at $98,000, $100,000 a piece, just within the federal insurance limits. Anyway, so he had succeeded at that, and then he created a new business as he was a great entrepreneur, to get involved with the brand new 401k industry. 401ks were just born, as you probably know, in 1983, 1984. And back then, interest rates, you're probably too young to remember this, but back then interest rates were sky high, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14%. And so participants in these fledgling 401k plans, for whether you were working for Ford Motors or, often it was the larger companies that introduced these 401k plans first, because they were trying to get away from their old style pension plans where they had these defined benefit pension plans where they had gazillions of dollars in obligations that they had to maintain in future benefits. So instead they thought, well, gee, rather than the future benefit, I'd rather define the contribution the company will make early on, and the participant can throw his or her money in, and then we're kind of off the hook. So participants back then, in contrast to today where fixed income returns are so low, you had plan participants who could make 10, 11, 12% returns annually on what were called guaranteed investment contracts right in their 401k plan. And so if you were an ordinary worker and you had the choice of stocks or bonds, which could go up or down in value, or this guaranteed investment contract option where you can make 10 or 12%, you thought, man, that's great. I'm going to take that. The problem was there were only 3 or 4 life insurance companies which were issuing these multi-million-dollar. Think of a guaranteed investment contract as a certificate of deposit, like you get at the bank, but a $50 million certificate of deposit issued by a big life insurance company like Prudential or Metropolitan Life to a 401k plan for this stable value account or GIC account. Well, at the time, there were only 3 or 4 life insurance companies doing it. So David, my partner, son of the Israeli ambassador to Mexico, he moved from selling CDs on a rate desk to the brand new idea of selling guaranteed investment contracts to 401k plans and to bank trusts who were creating pooled guaranteed investment contract funds, and to get on the phones and to get up early and to sell them all over the country. So we did that, but there wasn't a lot of capacity. So the long and the short of it is, where we killed it back then, transformed the business really, is we decided to go out and create additional capacity. So we spent a year getting on airplanes and going to talk to 25, 30 other AA and AAA rated life insurance companies, AA and AAA rated banks all across the world, like Sumitomo and Bayer in Japan, or Bayer Landesbank in Germany. And we brought another 30, just our little firm, brought another 30, 35 institutional players, banks and insurance companies, into this business, and created billions and billions of dollars in capacity that allowed the 401k industry really to flourish and grow. And so that was kind of my first big success. And we went from essentially a tiny, tiny startup to being the leaders in that industry within a couple of years. And then that laid the predicate for what we did at Bargain Network, that $35,000 company you talked about. And just what was in common in both of those and in subsequent ventures is we kind of knocked off an idea. So David took the idea that was working in selling CDs, $100,000 CDs, and we turned it into selling $50 million guaranteed investment contracts to pension funds. And same thing was true with this Bargain Network venture. First time I saw you could knock off an idea. You could take something that already existed and then do it better and do it faster and do it smarter and wake up earlier and outwork other people and be very successful at it. So you'd like, I can tell you about Bargain Network, but yeah. I don't want to monopolize this conversation.
No, it's very fascinating. And it goes to show that in any industry, if you see a need in there to make it more efficient or more streamlined, you can do that. It's not necessarily like you have to go out there and reinvent the wheel, as it were.
Right. Yeah. Oh, no. In fact, that's much more dangerous.
Right.
So then fast forward to 1994, 95, and I had exited the prior firm I just mentioned. After 7 or 8 years of doing anything, I tend to get itchy feet again, and I want to go into a whole new industry. And so I met some young guys in Santa Barbara where I'd had a second home, and these guys were in their early 20s. And they were managing an inbound call center for some absentee owners who were frankly not very attentive to the needs of their employees or their clients. But it was a fantastic concept. And what they were doing in the pre-internet days, in the 1992, 93, when there wasn't any high-speed internet, they would aggregate information on public auctions of automobiles, government auctions, private auctions, and also on bank REOs, on foreclosures. So this was the start of the Trulias, if I'm pronouncing that right. That these guys were selling lists of available foreclosures of consumers interested in buying a cheap home, and lists of auctions, vehicle auctions for consumers who wanted cheap cars. And so they sold this information via little classified ads that they took out in the cars for sale and homes for sale sections of thousands of newspapers all over the country. So they would drive amazing volumes of calls, tens of thousands of calls per month, inbound calls, very, very inexpensively. And they were great at turning the call into a service the consumer would pay $50 or $100 a year for to have access to these listings. And the problem was the listings weren't accurate. The company wasn't looking after the needs of consumers. They were hanging up the phone when the customers wanted refunds if they weren't happy. And so I saw a real opportunity there to bring the kind of fiduciary, white glove values we had in the institutional investment business into this consumer business. And so I also saw that these young kids, early 20s, they weren't they weren't partners, they weren't well paid. So I basically took 10, 12, all the senior managers of the company and made them partners and gave them equity, and we had all that expertise built in, and we just knocked off that business and did it right.
I love what you mentioned there, and I heard within that customer service, because I've noticed that companies that provide poor customer service on the outside to their customers also generally provide very poor internal care for their employees.
What a great insight.
And I really think it hurts business. And I'm seeing with medium to super large to mega businesses, a real downfall for some of these businesses not really focusing on those two aspects.
Wow. I hadn't put that together so formally, but you're exactly right.
Yeah.
Well, what do they say? I think it's an old saying in Japan that a fish rots from the head down. And this is definitely true in businesses. If you've got a senior management mentality that people don't matter, that's going to translate to customers. It's going to translate to your most valuable assets, your employees. And so that's a great observation. So we took great care of our customers. We took great care of our employees. We grew within a few years to being the largest private sector business in the history of Santa Barbara. We had over 1,000 employees. We turned it from a $35,000 startup into a $75 million a year business, which we sold in 8 years to a large public company. And the most fun thing about the day that we closed that deal was that it wasn't just me and the two other gentlemen who were my co-founding partners, who became multimillionaires. A dozen people, young men and women, were multimillionaires that day. And that was the best day of my life in business, because to have seen these young people start with great idealism and great enthusiasm, and to remain devoted over those years, to have them share in the fruits at the finish line was really thrilling.
That is amazing. And from all of your ventures and all that you've learned, what has been your greatest takeaway or lesson?
Oh, wow. Again, I love these questions. I wish more people would ask me these questions. I'm so good at remembering quotes, but I'm terrible at remembering who said them, which I've got to improve that. But someone once said that apart from love, the most sacred thing we have to give is our labor. And so and it relates to what we were just talking about a moment ago, about how we treat people. So the first thing I've learned is that there is nothing meaningful in life that you can do by yourself. I mean, maybe if you're a painter or a novelist, I guess you can. But certainly in business, there's nothing great, nothing rewarding that you can do by yourself. So attracting the right people, the right partners, the right team members is vital. Did you ever read the business book by Jim Collins called Good to Great?
No, but I've heard of it. I've been meaning to check it out. I have heard of it. I haven't read it.
I don't read a lot of business books, but that's one of the best I've ever read. And so the model there was that Collins is like a Harvard level business researcher, analyst. And he took a team of young graduate students, and they went out to find out what permitted companies to go from being good companies to being great companies. And these were all public companies that they were exploring. And they said that they went in with a number of prejudices and beliefs that were kind of shattered by what their research revealed. And one of these was that it's not so much the firebrand, Lee Iacocca kind of hard driving leader that was the leader of these companies that made the jump. Companies like Walgreens or Starbucks from good to great. That instead it was more the human feel. And anyway, Collins used the metaphor of a bus. He said, an entrepreneurship or even in an established company, it's like a bus. And he said, and when you're first, in the early stages, when it doesn't even matter where the bus is driving or what seats the key people are sitting in on the darn bus. All that matters is that you get the right people on the bus, and then you're going to figure out, okay, who should sit where and where the heck are we going together? So the first thing I've learned is the importance of getting the right people on the bus. And that valuing what they do, this sacred labor that they're providing, is essential. You know, and I can already tell by some of the things you've said that you'll be in agreement with what I'm going to say now. So something that too many businesses in this fast-paced era are forgetting, and that is that every business has this incredibly valuable currency. It's the cheapest currency they have, and yet it's arguably one of the most valuable currencies they possess. And that is the currency of appreciation and recognition. So, think how cheap it is to stop and catch somebody in the act of doing something great in your organization, and to acknowledge that, to put wind in their sails for that, to identify when something wonderful has occurred, and to use your acknowledgement and use your gratitude as currency within the business. It's so valuable, and too few senior executives use it these days.
You are so right on target. You're right. I did agree with you. Recently, I got the pleasure of working with a medium-sized business that asked for my help. I was back in corporate for many years working as a financial consultant, helping businesses in particular with cash flow. And they asked me to come on in and see what was wrong with their cash flow. Why are they not pulling in enough money? And their biggest problem was the in and out of employees. It was like a revolving door every week, like 10 new employees in and 10 new out, in and out, in and out. And the biggest problem was they were slave driving them. They would show zero appreciation, but they said, well, give them good money, so that's good enough. And,
it's not.
and I said to them, you know what? Money only goes, I think there was some scientific research that shows that when you give a raise, it works for about 3 weeks or so that they're pumped up from the new raise. And then after that, it goes down even lower than before, which you wouldn't think. And appreciation, though, was shown to give the biggest boost in confidence and productivity.
Yeah. And how much does appreciation cost a company? Not one red cent.
No, I mean, it might cost you a little bit of time, effort, in just mentioning it and putting it out there for a minute, mentioning and paying attention. But other than that, as far as bottom line and dollar in your business, it's not costing you a penny.
Not a hard outlay of dollars. And nurturing our relationships with our colleagues, with our staff, has got to be a key mission for any business today.
Yeah. And as we mentioned, what made your businesses so great is your attention to detail for your employees and then for the customers. And when the employees are suffering and they're feeling slave-drived and they're miserable, how do you think they're going to treat your customers? They won't have the energy to even care about your customers.
Perfectly said. Couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah. And so you've done some amazing work, and you have a current project called MoneyTips. Explain for our audience a little bit about what MoneyTips is all about.
Well, MoneyTips is an online community. We just entered our second year, and we have a lot of wind in our sails. It's a very exciting time for us. And it's an online community where American consumers and financial professionals can engage one another directly about all things having to do with personal finances. They discuss topics like investing in retirement, mortgages, insurance, and taxes, pretty much anything that has to do with how people save and invest, borrow, or spend their money. And put simply, Christina, our mission is at MoneyTips is to democratize and promote the spread of financial information, to remove the cost barrier and the mystique, the sort of the black box around financial topics that legacy financial institutions have perpetuated for so long to justify their high fees and their huge profits. And I'll editorialize a moment here. I guess, to me, the faulty premise that we are dependent on them, that we're not smart enough to take control of our own financial lives. So MoneyTips was created to empower financial consumers by establishing an online community where they could learn for themselves. And we have a pedigree in creating successful online businesses. So this is just the latest.
I love that, Michael, because often, I mean, it was a number of years back, I was talking to a girlfriend of mine, and we were just talking about money issues in our life, and she got really offended because I'm pretty open. I will tell people what's going on in my life, and if my friends ask me, I'll tell them, okay, this is going right, this isn't going right, here's what I'm noticing. And she got really offended, and she said, well, money issues are my own personal thing, and I don't even talk to my own sister about it. And I was like, wow, the secrecy behind money. And I think there's a lot of shame and guilt tied to the fact that you don't feel confident enough around the money issues. And one friend even said to me once, I think people more easily talk about sex lives in the bedroom than they will about their money issues, which is really, really scary.
Yeah, but, I think some of that is cultural. I'm Jewish, and I mentioned earlier I was fourth or fifth generation salesman. I don't know how much you know about the history of Jewish people during the Middle Ages, but in essence, the Catholic Church said that Catholics could not lend money at interest rate. They called that usury. Jews, on the other hand, were kind of hounded from village to village and chased out, and they weren't allowed to own land or pretty much do anything but be commercially involved. They could have stores, they could have shops, they could lend money. So culturally, almost genetically, I would say, Jewish people have comfort with money, have comfortable, as I did earlier, asking for 25 cents for my autograph. When I was a kid, we have comfort talking about money. So I'm aware of what you just said, that a lot of people are very embarrassed or uncomfortable about it. But I think some of that's cultural. There is kind of a guilt, and maybe it even goes back to those Catholic injunctions, no offense to my Catholic friends, but the injunctions of the church for millennia against making money on money. Yeah. I wonder how deep that goes. I don't know.
Yeah, and maybe within our own culture, like you said, we have this kind of cultural idea that companies handle our money, like Charles Schwab. You want your money handled? Go to Charles Schwab. They'll take care of your money. But what's wonderful about MoneyTips is that now you can take your own power back and learn to, to personally finance yourself and understand your own finances and get comfortable with it.
Exactly. And we have a feature that makes it so easy for consumers to do that for free. I would encourage any of your listeners to go on to MoneyTips.com. And if they have any question about any area of personal finance, again, mortgages, insurance, investing, tax, retirement, college savings, right on the homepage and on every page of the site, there's a prominent box where you can type in your question and ask any question. It can be basic, it can be very technical, and you will get an answer within 24 hours from a credentialed professional at no cost. So providing immediate access to that kind of information, along with thousands of articles and videos, the ability to search a database of several million financial professionals all over the country, and to not only, not only look at ads like you mentioned the Charles Schwab ad, but to get a chance to experience the professional answering questions, submitting their own articles or video content. So now you're directly engaging the experience of the professional rather than just some ad that's touting a given firm. So it's that sense of community, that sense of direct interaction between consumers and professionals that I think helps to promote this sense of empowerment. Yeah. Can make their own. It's just like the doctors. Think of how doctors have long had this mystique around them of being godlike. And you get sick and you go to the doctor and she or he is going to heal you. And so you kind of abdicate personal responsibility for maintaining your own health with diet, nutrition, whatever. The same thing is true at MoneyTips. We're trying to give people good nutrition and good exercise for their personal finances by democratizing access to information and direct access to professionals.
That is absolutely fabulous. Are there any upcoming events, workshops, or anything you'd like to share with the audience?
Oh, yeah. Thank you. I'm the oldest guy in the firm by probably close to 20 years. So one of the fun things about changing industries every 8 or 10 years is you learn a lot of new things. And so my playbook is being updated with things like tweetcasts, which frankly 5 years ago I would have had no clue what a tweetcast is. But we have an upcoming tweetcast. We'll have a reach of about 30 million followers of the specialists who are tweeting. It has to do with investing issues of millennials and Gen Xers. We did a similar tweetcast several months ago that had a reach of 18 million, and that was on the retiree next door, on kind of the lessons of successful retirees. So we are, in addition to the daily blocking and tackling we're doing at MoneyTips, we are sponsoring some very exciting events that take advantage of modern webcasting and tweeting technology to engage hundreds of thousands of people at one time on personal financial topics.
That is totally fabulous. Well, before we head on out here, Michael, is there anything you'd like to share? How can people get in contact with your corporation and find out more about you?
Very simply, go to MoneyTips.com. And this is if you're a consumer or a financial professional. Go to MoneyTips.com and ask a question, sniff around. It's very easy to search by financial segment, whether it's borrowing, insurance, investing, retirement, tax. So you can search those broad categories. You can search hundreds of subcategories. Watch our videos and just become part of the community, become part of the discussion. And then if you're a financial professional and you'd like to be able to engage consumers directly and at no cost, you can also come to MoneyTips and claim a free professional profile. Any investment professional is encouraged to claim a full page where he or she can talk about their business, their practice, what makes them unique. So again, this is all part of the desire to democratize access to expertise here, rather than charging them to interact with consumers or charging consumers to interact with professionals. We've created a really safe environment, a very fun environment in which they can interact directly. So come to MoneyTips.com and join the conversation.
Well, that is totally fabulous. It's been such a fun conversation, Michael. Thank you for coming and sharing your wisdom and gifts around Money Tips and all of your financial success.
It's been a lot of fun, Christina. Thanks for your time.
Savvy Central Radio is proud to present a live interactive series featuring a new mix to business networking and interviews. Our second event will take place on May 23rd at Tornasaw Wellness in Manhattan with our guest, Rochelle Khanna, licensed clinical social worker. She'll share with us her new book, 30 Days of Prayer, Healing Autoimmunity for Women. This event is for health professionals, fitness experts, alternative care professionals, and anyone looking to create optimum wellness in their life. To find out more, book your free ticket today at bit.ly.com/savvyevent, 2. That is bit.ly.com/savvyevent, 2.